from the book of John, chapter 12, verses 1 through 9. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, who he had raised from the dead. There they gave a dinner for him. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those at the table with him. Mary took a pound of costly perfume made of pure nard, anointed Jesus' feet, and wiped them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of the disciples, the one who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii, and the money given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. He kept the common purse and used to steal what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone. She bought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me." When the great crowd of the Jews learned that he was there, they came not only because of Jesus, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. That ends the reading.
Is a Roman Catholic nun. Her name is Sister Joan Chittister. She tells the story about an elder monk and a young disciple. And this disciple asks this elder, "Where shall I look for enlightenment?" "Right here," the elder says. "But when will it happen?" "It's happening now." "Then why don't I experience it?" "Because you don't look." "But what shall I look for?" Smiling, the elder monk said, "Just look. It's all around you." Of course, the disciple was impatient and wanted a quick and easy journey to enlightenment. And he said, "But what shall I look at?" "Anything your eyes lay upon." "Shall I look in a special way?" "No." "Why not?" And by now, like you and I, the elder feels a little frustration with this young disciple and offers him a little more insight. He says, "You are trying too hard. Your problem is that you are not present to the moment. Because to look, you must be here. And your problem is you are always somewhere else." Mary, the woman with the alabaster jar in today's gospel story, unlike the other guests at the dinner table in Bethany, was looking. And she was present, and she was there, and she was in the moment, and she could see on Jesus' face the fear, the agony, but the assurance that his hour was about to come, and his death was near. And although there was much to talk about when you're sitting with the likes of Jesus, Mary didn't miss the moment at all of sensing his pain, his exhaustion, his need for rest among friends before he mustered the full courage to do that which God is asking him to do, and that is to live with love, even if it takes your life. So, right smack dab in the middle of the dinner party, Mary proceeds to anoint him, to prepare him for his burial. And her actions, more than her words, said to Jesus and to any of the other guests who were listening, I get it, Jesus. And prophetically, her actions proved that she did get it. She did know that his time was approaching. She did know that she was in the company of a holy man. Here, she says, with her actions, not her words. But here, she says, let me soothe you. Let me calm you down. Let me prepare you for the difficult days ahead. The difficult days for you and the difficult days for us who followed you in the past few years and love you. Her actions reminded the people around the table, as they remind us, that Jesus' last few weeks among them, he had tried to talk to them about the powers and the principalities of the world that saw him as a threat to the business as usual in the temple, in the town, in their lives. The Reverend Barbara Brown Taylor says it beautifully, and so I quote from her. By raising Lazarus from the dead, he, Jesus, has graduated from the category of manageable nuisance to serious threat. And they were about to put an end to that threat and to that nuisance. And Mary got it. She heard it. And when he showed up at her house, or the house that they had this dinner in, she wanted him to know he is not alone. She was so present to Jesus that her love compelled her to give all she had to him by using her expensive perfume to anoint him, her hair to dry his feet, her human touch to soothe and massage his feet. We'll talk more about washing of feet and its symbolism in the days of Jesus. But for today, let's stay at Jesus' feet with Mary, where his other friends around the table were afraid to go. If the truth be told, like Judas in this story, Mary's public display of intimacy with Jesus is too unnerving to watch. So we too would be more comfortable to follow Jesus and to get off the track of anointing him and recognizing that his death is imminent and soothing and consoling him. And we too want to try to stop this act of extravagant love. And so for a moment, don't we all doubt that Judas might be right? And so we think to ourselves too, maybe we should be challenging Mary here, and maybe even Jesus, with the half-truth that the proper thing to do with the expensive perfume is to sell it and to use the money for better causes, to serve the poor. It's tempting, it's very tempting to recoil from extravagant love, from intimacy, from the thought of Jesus' death, from the reality that there was indeed a plot to stop Jesus by making of him, the one we love, a mockery, by pulling him down, pushing him, and punishing him as they would any other ordinary common criminal. Crucifixion. They were intent on killing his dream, on killing God's dream. But Mary wouldn't stop tending to her friend. Her actions place her alongside the prophets, saying what others cannot say. This is our Messiah. He is not going to be with us long. Don't miss it. This is the one who embodies a God who will not stop short of extravagant love. Don't miss it. Look. It's important for Jesus that we get this idea of extravagant love in order that we too might taste of this unending love that God has for us and pass it around freely, lavishly, wherever we can. And so in this story, not for the first time, but in this story again, Jesus has Mary's back. He knows the likes of Judas, the likes of us. He knows how hard it is to stomach a wild, emotional love that gives all when necessary. And his response to Judas, we think, is a bit harsh, but it sobers us from a stupor of denial and fear. He says, leave her alone. Leave her alone. He's defended her before at another dinner party when he said to her sister Martha, Mary has chosen the better part. And so he says it again here. Leave her alone. She is preparing me for my burial. And with those words, we too are bolted into Jesus' assurance that love is always the answer. Love is always the answer. Love is always the answer to any terror, any despair, any wrongdoing, any hurt, any threat. Say it with me. Love is the answer. We back away from following Jesus sometimes, as Judas did. And we are tempted because his economic and charitable logic, as one pastor said, of placing one necessary component of Christianity over and above another necessary component of Christianity. But Jesus sobers us, even in the midst of his own fear, and in the midst of doing a very difficult thing, giving his life in order that love might be real. And we begin slowly to get it as well. We begin to look, and we begin to see that soon, very soon, it is not just Mary who's pouring out all she has, but Jesus too will pour out all of what he has within him, up to giving his very life, all for the sake of love and truth. And so we see, if we look and we're present and we stay long enough in the difficult times, that it's the very extravagant love of God that has Jesus and Mary and every last one of us. And so, don't miss it. Let's help one another not to miss it. Let's not be somewhere else when this is happening. And in the next 2 weeks, let's follow Mary and stay with Jesus as he faces his death, and just look, and just be there, and just be here. Because although our Christian faith asks us to do this every year, over and over again, if we are present, if we look, among other things, we will see, number one, extravagant love. Extravagant love does not exempt us from suffering. That's one of the centerpieces of our Christian faith. We will learn something about this necessary pattern of living a life of love, passion, and death. And sometimes we will be broken and we will experience little deaths as we prepare for our own big death. But if we give it our all, we will also be reminded that death is not the final answer. Life is. But there's no going around it, and there's no going under it. There is only going through it. Suffering, passion, giving all we've got, and we will taste of the sweetness of life beyond death. And so when we get it, when we look as Mary did, when we dare to walk the whole way with Jesus, it is only then that our response will be to do in our time what Jesus did in his time. Reveal the extravagant love of God. Heal the sick. Comfort those who are afflicted, and sometimes afflict those who are too comfortable. Not my words, someone else's. Tend to the poor. Give preference to the poor. We usually get this backwards. We think that all of our corporal works of mercy will lead us to love God more. But it's the other way around. This is what Jesus has been trying to say to us. It's the other way around. As we learned as little children in our Sunday school classes, I love God because God has first loved me. And once I get that I am already loved and accepted and forgiven, then it is not a duty to be about the ministry of God, to be about doing in our time what Jesus did in his. It's a privilege and it's a response to knowing that we are loved. Once we know, once we taste, once we are convinced that we are loved by an unending love, our lives, our behaviors, the way we talk to one another, the way we can stand at peace in the midst of horrific circumstances, will be our privilege. And so, my friends, if indeed you want to experience resurrection in a couple of weeks, enter these next 2 weeks. match your life story with the story of Jesus. Years and years ago, I read a poem by Father John Shea, and I'll only voice the beginning of it. It was the much in Mary that Jesus loved. Too much love, too much hair, too much perfume, too great a price. It was the much in Mary that Jesus loved. We each have been given much. Let's greet one another and give our all.